Between 12 and 14, graveyard shifts thin the lobby to carpet and clocks. The carpet is a green with a pattern that looks normal until you stare at it long enough to find the mistakes. A fleur-de-lis that duplicates in a way that stutters a line of vines that runs out of leaves and starts over mid-repeat. The clocks, two behind the front desk and one above the bell stand, never quite agree. And after midnight, one of them gains a minute like it's stealing from the others. It was my 3rd month at the Monarch, which is a grand name for a hotel that grew out of a train station and then kept growing like a vine trained the wrong way. The atrium glass was newer than the stairs were newer than the mezzanine, and the mezzanine was newer than the bones of the building, which were brick and rivet and odd triangles where the original footprint had been cut away. We told people we had 14 floors. We had 14 buttons in the guest elevators. There was no button for 13, and everyone thinks they're clever when they bring it up. Company policy, I say if I'm at the desk helping, superstition baked into the design, the elevator jumps. And I point to the light panel that shows it. 12 to 14, a neat hop, as if that's the tidiest thing in the world. My job is Bellman, nights. People think Bellman talk. The work is quieter than that. Bags to rooms, rooms to bags, trays out of hallways, the odd errand. I know the weight of suitcases by the way the handle pulls. You can tell if someone packed books by the way the wheels complain on carpet. You can tell if someone is running by whether the zippers line up. I see people when they're tired and when they're leaving, which is the same look on the face with different clothes. That night I was front for a kid on break. It was near midnight. The big clocks disagreed by 3 minutes and then 2, a tiny act of generosity. The desk monitor cycled security camera feeds in a lazy loop. 6 empty corridors, the loading bay, the glass doors to the street, the elevators at rest. A man dozed in an overcoat by the fireplace. A woman in a tracksuit argued with her phone near the water station. The fountain in the atrium pushed a gentle sheet down its copper wall, a sound like someone ironing in the next room. A roller bag sat by the bell stand, black with a telescoping handle. There was no owner nearby. I put a hand on the top to see if it had the warmth of someone just leaving. It did, a body warmth that holds in the plastic for a while after the hand lets go. The tag was new, the plastic still glossy, the string unfrayed. Monarch Hotel, floor 13, room 1312. The numbers sat under our logo like we printed them ourselves. We don't have a 13. I turned the tag over. Both sides said the same. The handwriting wasn't handwriting. It was the font we used on the luggage tags. The same neat fake cursive the printers like to call script. Someone in housekeeping keeps them on a tray that smells faintly like lemon, because that S where they keep the pledge too. I can carry that smell in my teeth if I want it. These tags had come out of that tray, or one like it. The only wrong thing was the number. The front desk night clerk saw me looking and shrugged. He was new enough to still shrug with his whole body, like a dog shakes after rain. Weird, he said. It sounded like a question. It says 13, I said. We don't have a 13, he said, like I was the one who might not know. You can take it to 14. There is a time on nights when the hum of a building falls off and picks up again. It's between the compressors cycling and the last bus that rattles the plate glass. The automatic doors sigh and stop sighing. The ghost trace of a perfume blows down from the bar and thinly disappears. It feels for a second like someone is holding their breath and you're in the room with them, and you want to hold yours to keep from being rude. This was then. Sure, I said. The handle was cold, a winter cold that got under your fingernail beds. The bag rolled easy on the lobby's hard floor and then went stubborn on carpet, the way all roller bags do when they make the passage from tile to pile. The elevator bank watched me with brushed steel eyelids. If you're in back, there's a call button that pings louder than front. We use freight. The bell is a higher note, a little scold of a sound. The guest elevators ding with a polite chime and a cough. I pressed freight. I like the freight because you can see the walls, take the knocks of the building, the little runs where something heavy slid the dark rounds, where a dolly kissed the scratches from linen carts that find the nipple of a screw and drag a thread of paint. Freight smells like detergent and dust and someone's lunch from 2 days ago. Between 12 and 14, the indicator stalls. It always does. The plate where 13 would be is blank, the same off-white plastic as the frame, but it holds the dirt of hands in a way the other blanks don't. It is a thing people touch without looking. Someone trying to make sense of their own fingers in the middle of the night will find that spot like it's a worrystone. The cab slid, hummed, then stopped without a chime. The gate scissored open. I pulled the bag in, then backed the cart because I like to pin the cart between the threshold and the wall so it doesn't roll away. The corridor at 14 was its normal self on the other side. Patterned carpet, new sconces with shades, the dim beige of tea art that is trying not to be art in frames that make you want to adjust them. The corridor between thinner steel lip and threshold inside the freight looked half a beat older. Wallpaper with a big cream damask instead of the palm leaf print we had installed the year before. The change was small enough that your eye wants it to be a trick of the light until the smell in your nose says old paste. And then your fingers come up and they have dust on them. The numbers on the first 2 doors were stamped brass. They climbed in evens and then settled, 1308, 1310, 1312. The 1312 was crooked by a hair, which is the sort of thing that makes me blink hard and step back because I want to touch it. But I also want to keep from leaving my prints where someone who cares will have to polish around them. The door was unlatched. I pushed it with 2 fingers. Furniture wears sheets when rooms go out of rotation. The sheets hold the square shapes of what's under them like ice holds a leaf. The room carried the cold you get when the HVAC doesn't T-cycle right. Not breath you can see exactly, but if you exhale slowly, you can watch the fog of your own, staying in the same spot longer than it should. I set the bag by the bed and let the handle down soft. The wheels rolled the last inch on their own, like the carpet leaned a little toward the window. The house phone on the desk ticked once and went still. That tick is a relay pulling or letting go, and it's the kind of noise I can put a name to because I grew up around machines that talk to themselves. I looked in the mirror above the dresser and saw the room behind me too bright in a way that had nothing to do with light bulbs. It was the right reflection, or the geometry where it was supposed to be, but the sheet on the chair in the mirror had a nap that looked brushed the wrong way. There was a coffee ring in the reflected coaster. There was no ring on the actual coaster. I stepped closer and put my thumb on the glass like a kid at an aquarium. The glass was cool but not cold. In low light, most mirrors feel colder than the room because the room paints its temperature over them and the glass refuses. This mirror didn't reflect my hand exactly. It held the smudge of a palm left there before mine. A left-hand palm, bigger than mine, the scars at the base of the thumb like something had stitched itself up badly. Back in the hall, my cart had an envelope on it I hadn't set there. White, the cheap hotel envelopes that live in the desk drawers under the stationery. Someone had written Bellman in block letters with a dull pen, dense white where the pen had dug. Inside were 3 coins, old ones, not worth a thing, silver dull with the kind of black you get if they spent years in wet paper. There was a key, also a thing we don't use anymore, stamped 13. The claim check was from our old ledger carbon paper type. The numbers with their feet, like they learned to stand in the 1970s. The date punched crooked and down, where the stamp for the time goes, was 0319 in purple ink, gone almost brown. I held the key in my fist and looked down the hall. I looked both ways, the way you'd cross a street. I put the key and coins back in the envelope because that felt like something normal. I leaned the envelope between the handle of the cart and the bar. I pulled the cart back half a foot. pushing down with my forearm so the wheels would squeal. The squeal stayed in the room, muffled, like cloth pressing a mouth. When the freight opened onto service, the indicator winked like nothing had happened and lit 14. The corridor on the other side was our 14, with the palm leaf wallpaper and the wall sconces with the tea shades, and the light was warmer, and I could smell the iced tea machine citrus line furring in the way it does if someone forgot to swap it. It isn't citrus, it's plastic, but the mind skips and names what it wants. Later, security played back the footage for me because I asked. I made it a joke. "Did you catch me disappear?" I said. All we saw was me waiting at the freight doors on 12. On camera, they never open, and then I was back rolling an empty cart, as if I had just remembered something in the basement and gone for it. The night guy pointed with his nail where I stood. The whites of his eyes showed too much around the iris, the way they do when someone is trying not to look nervous and you catch them. His chair ticked where a spring didn't fit right. "Old building," he said. "Old building," I said. We watched a different camera for a while. The front doors, the snow on the street falling steadily, even though the forecast had promised us flurries, which is a word that sounds kinder than it is. The road took a shine under the streetlight. Tires passed. No one came in. At 03:19, the house phone on the desk rang once and dropped. It does that sometimes when a guest hangs up on the operator before the switch catches. Except there isn't an operator anymore. There's a board in a closet that thinks there is. I answered to stop the ring from going again. There was no one. The click left a little idea of someone listening, like a trace of smoke feels like a taste. Another bag sat there by the bell stand. Newer tag, same room. The plastic still had the factory scuff where they stack them front to back. The handle was cold. A drop of water shaped itself and ran from the telescoping joint like condensation. The blank plate on the freight indicator shone clean where someone had touched it and wiped it without knowing they had wiped it, like you do with a worry stone. By 4, the lobby felt like a waiting room for a doctor who does not take emergencies. I pushed the second bag into the freight and rode. The car hummed. Between 12 and 14, the indicator gave a little flick like a swallowed hiccup, and then it didn't. It so much stop as refused to go. The gate scissored open to the older wallpaper, the corridor with numbers that made sense, until they didn't, and then made their own. 1308, 1310, 1312. The carpet in that hall had a nap worn one way by feet that had a different habit than the feet I knew. Feet no hallways, like tires no lanes. These feet had walked heavy on the left side, as if the right was bad, and they had done it for years. The door swung when I pushed it. The room felt colder than before, or I was colder. I set the bag by the bed. The wheels did the last inch. The house phone ticked and did not ring. In the mirror, the room behind me was brighter, in exactly the way a room is when someone has left the curtains open behind the shears, and streetlight makes a peel on the plaster. The shears in my room were drawn. In the mirror, the sheet on the armchair had a dip like someone had sat too long, got up, and the fabric didn't recover. I am good at not pushing my luck. I am not good at admitting to myself that I believe what is here. I backed out and closed the door softly, so no latch clicked and made a new noise in the world. In the hall, my cart had an envelope on top of the first envelope, which I hadn't moved. Another key in that one too, stamped 13 in the tired kind of font you can feel more than see. The coins were different this time. They were an old state where the bird looks like it's landing forever. The claim check was from the ledger again, the pressure of the pen in the numbers, and the way the carbon smear held where someone corrected a 7 to a 1. The timestamp was 3:19 like before. The hotel has a breath like a horse. It pushes and pulls without needing to tell you why. In that breath, I could hear the hum of the ice machines waking, the compressors in the basement taking turns. The slower hum, the thicker one, with the rattle on the tail end of the cycle that meant the South Bank was running rich on refrigerant. If you stand too close in summer, you can taste coolant on your mouth like pennies. It was winter. The taste was there anyway. In the morning, a manager who wears her heels like they her last soldiering thing asked me to fill a form. She called it an incident, which is what managers call something that happened when they don't want to say something happened. I wrote the time and what I had done with the bag. She asks for names. I had none to give. She says we aren't supposed to take untagged luggage to a room. I held up the tag. She frowned like good paper was being wasted on bad printing. We don't have a 13, she said, more tired than mean. The system printed it, I said. The system prints what is told, she said, and crossed her arms. We do not carry a working floor plan for all the floors. We keep a laminated card with emergency routes and exits like every hotel does. The card is supposed to slide into a pocket behind the door, and most rooms have theirs stuck to the back of the closet or under the ice bucket because people pull them out to read and forget where they belong. The card for 14 shows a rectangle of hall and the little stairwell icons, like someone thought to help you find your way when you are already in a hurry. The card does not show anything between 12 and 14, but a void where logic and fire codes should be. Housekeeping didn't have it easy that week. A stomach flu ran the staff like a brush fire. 2 down Monday, then 3, then 5. People hold their hands politely away from their faces when they are told they have to step in for someone who clocks out sick. But hands go to mouths anyway. There was a memo on the corkboard about comp time that made practical sense and felt like a kindness. We put on gloves more often and forgot to change them as often as we should. A few rooms got skipped in the update to a new brand of coffee pods because no one wanted to box old pods and label them for staff. I moved around more than usual, running bottles of water, pulling trash, checking keys. The Monarch has a sound between midnight and the hour, with no name where the building seems to stir and settle. If you let it, that stir sticks under your nails. I started taking the freight to 12 and waiting a second longer than I needed to. The car AS floor has its own tilt if you stand in the front left corner. Not a thing you notice unless you have time and small things to occupy it. The light under the guard on the ceiling comes on with a blink, then a second blink, then it steadies. I would watch the blank plate where the strange thumb bright lived and feel the urge to touch it, the way some people want to put their finger in a socket, just to know. At 03:19, the house phone rings once and drops. That night I lifted and held the handset just to feel the old spring in it. I listened to nothing. Somewhere in the wall was the click of a relay, and somewhere else an operator who didn't exist sat up straighter. I took the bag to the room with no latch that doesn't exist. People think fear is dramatic. It is a steady thing if you are good at work. Work makes the motions for fear to ride on. My hands did what they were told. Push the bag. Catch with the foot because you don't trust the lock. Note the mirror, note the cold, note the sheet, note the phone. Step back. Notice the envelope on the cart. Refold. Hands learn to hold a steady tremor like old trains learn to carry rattle. The third envelope had the same Bellman in the same block hand. The claim check's carbon clung thin because someone wrote too light, then went back to press harder over the same lines. I slipped this one into my waistcoat pocket and felt it tap my rib flap when I moved. I kept the other 2 under the register drawer. It felt like stealing in exactly the way returning them would have felt like being foolish. Security is full of men who want to do their duty without knowing what they all do it to. If I gave the envelope to anyone, I would be giving them that feeling, and they would need to do something to be okay. They would put the envelope where we don't have a process for it. That's how things get lost. I was already lost enough inside the feeling of having done my job wrong and right at once. Day shift came and made coffee that smelled burned because someone used the single brew machine S-Clean cycle as a pot. The night manager told me to sleep. I folded uniforms in the locker room because I like my sleeve creases to carry the weight of the hanger and not the hope of a lucky press. The little speaker on the maintenance desk whispered the radio noise of the world. A basketball game somewhere. A siren that might be our street or not. On the corner of the desk sat a notepad that said Monarch in grey, and a pen that didn't write unless you pushed too hard. Someone had written, "Ice machine leaks slow," in a hand I knew from the housekeeping board. Someone had written, "Don T go to 13" as a joke, and crossed it out so that the crossing looked like stripes. I slept badly and woke dull. I could swear I heard the house phone ring once in my room at home, which is childish. I lay there and counted the turns of my ceiling fan. When I closed my eyes, I could see the mirror in the non-existent room catch the light of a street lamp that wasn't TT on our block. When I came in that night, the front desk asked if I would mind putting out the continental breakfast carts because the morning guy had texted he might be late on account of the road and the power company. The wind had brought down a branch somewhere, and the one block behind us had gone dark for an hour and then come back dirty. The lights in that building came up with a hum that bled into our lobby as if the grid were a pond, and someone had thrown a rock in the far corner. The manager had 2 radios clipped to her belt, one that talked to us and one that talked to a guy named Danny from the power company who had a voice AM radio was built to honor. I found the carts we use for the breakfast and nested them like shopping carts, wheels complaining. I could smell the dishwashers running in back and a sweet thing under the lemon in the cleaning spray that means the product will crack your hands later if you do not respect water. I pushed pralines into small bowls and counted the pastries and poured juice from big bags into the machine and wiped the crank handle of the cereal hopper with a cloth I kept too long because it felt wrong to change it too often. I was careful to put the tongs handle side out. If the tongs fall handle side in, someone will grab the wrong end. The tongs clacked in a way that says you haven't slept enough. Between all that, the house phone ticked once and didn't ring. This time I held the handset in my hand when it ticked, and I could feel the tick in the weight of the plastic, a little recoil that you get from cheap triggers and old kids' toys. It happens to a lot of night people. The light that means day makes you restless because it isn't your light. The window above the front doors has a top sash that stays dirty no matter who does it. The cold from the glass came to the tile and made the tile feel older. The bags sat where they always do at that hour, like a guest who knows they're next. Tag pretty as you please. The font with the fake smile, the room number that didn't know it shouldn't exist. It would have been more comforting if it had looked wrong. It would have been more comforting if anybody had wanted it. In the freight elevator, the blank plate looked cleaner than the rest again, like you get when someone oils their hands and then lets them sit somewhere, and the oil picks up the dust of the world and leaves a thumb of clean in the dirty. I had not pressed it. I thought of pressing it. Work is a set of decisions you have learned to not have to decide. We stopped. The gate scissored. The wallpaper was old damask, and the hall smelled like glue and nothingness, a smell like paper left in a sealed box. I pushed the bag in. The numbers went 1308, 1310, 1312. The carpet had the worn left lane. In the room, the mirror showed me a reflection that was mine and too much mine. There is nothing worse than seeing your own face when you're paying attention to other things. The phone ticked. I leaned and put the bag against the bed. Under the sheet, the armchair held a shape. It was the shape a chair would have if a throw pillow sat on it, or if a person sat and left 10 minutes ago. The dip had the geometry of weight. The sheet did not move. In the mirror, the dip was deeper. The shears in the mirror stirred. Mine did not. Mine. I could only hear the hum that might have been the ice maker on 12, or the blower in this room, or my own blood. I moved toward the desk because work says use the desk to drop the envelope if there is one. There was an envelope. Bellman. The key inside was warm, like it had lived in someone's pocket. The coins in this one were foreign in the way money gets before a country changes its mind about what to be. One of them had a hole because people used to string coins, which always feels like keeping a trophy of debt. The claim check had the date stamped crooked and a time that read 03.19 with the 9 just a little higher than its brothers. "Okay," I said to the room. That was the whole of it. I have said okay to ice machines with tempers and safes that sulk and a little compressor we use in the back of the bar that will catch when you tell it you will come back later. On my way out, I saw something on the floor under the bed sheet that draped to the carpet. It was not a shoe, and I could not make it be a shoe even by wanting. It was the corner of a rectangular thing, leather soft and old, the size of a pocket journal. It had the dented look of something kept in a back pocket for a long stretch of a life. I got on my knees and put 2 fingers under the sheet and lifted because I am an idiot and because I work here. A whiff of old dust came out in a burp, the way a basement does when you open a footlocker. The book was too close to reach without lifting the sheet higher than I wanted to. I let the sheet fall and stood up like nothing had happened. That's the shape of a night decision. Half a thing, half undone. Security watched me again later because he liked to work, and I liked to have someone to talk to who would say almost nothing. He let me lean on the back of his chair. A line of ghosting ran up the monitor where the screen had burned in an old notice about storing ladders. In the camera you could see me looking at the bag by the bell stand, but when the freight opened on my end, the camera stayed on the closed doors. In the camera you could see me sigh. In the camera you could watch my cart go slightly damp around the handle after I came back. We looked together at the damp. He touched the screen where the damp was, and his nail left a squeak. "You ever seen a floor plan?" he asked, quiet, like he was asking if I had a cigarette he could pretend to refuse. "The old one," I said. "Any," he said. "Nothing with a 13, I said. He made a sound that wasn't a laugh. The chair spring made its little complaint. He told me a thing that wasn't a story. "When I did days," he said, "a lady insisted she was on 13. We put her on 14. She said her phone kept ringing once and stopping. She said housekeeping forgot her towels. This was before you." I did not say what I wanted to say, which was, you should write these things down where no one will read them, because see how you make a ledger that will tell you the truth only if you know how to tell the machine to skip a page. In my pocket, the claim check made a small rasp when I moved, like the sound a new dollar makes before it sees the world too long. In my drawer in the locker room, the first 2 lay under the register in a way that told me where they were without my hand needing to hunt. By the 4th night, the pattern found me. The house phone clicked at 0319. The bag stood there. The tag read 1312. The freight felt colder than the lobby. The blank plate shone clean. The gate scissored. The old wallpaper greeted me. The numbers climbed and settled. The door stood unlatched. The room held its breath. The phone ticked. The mirror did what it had to. The chair's sheet dipped. The mirrors dipped more. The envelope said, Bellman. The key stamped 13 sat warm. The coins clinked with a tired metallic sound. The claim check realigned the 9 a little higher than the rest. I took small liberties. I pressed the blank plate with my thumb once and pulled back like it had burned me. It didn't. I carried a towel to wipe where the blank shone clean and then didn't, because I did not want my own print to become the bright. I brought a thermos with tea and set it in the freight corner and watched the steam hang like a little flag and decide nothing. I opened the envelope in the hall instead of the room. I slid the key into the pocket where I keep the box cutter. Box cutter and old key next to each other made the fabric feel like it had a spine. When Metro County released a boil water advisory that week because a main had ruptured 2 blocks over and the good pipes dragged silt back toward themselves, we put out a table with packets of instant coffee and a sign that said, "Use bottled." People get mad at the sign about water because they are mad at something else. My hands smelled like plastic jug handles. The manager sat with 2 radios and her lips thin, and a spreadsheet open to move staff like chess pieces she couldn't T-train. We left trays outside doors for the guests who didn't want to open, which is never about the water and always about something inside. I rolled the trays away half an hour after they were left, and the coffee ring circles on the plates were the same size if the cup had been lifted or not. Because whoever made the plates had chosen a perfect ring for the idea of coffee, and we live inside ideas more than we like. On the 5th night, I took the claim checks home. It felt like a bigger crime and a smaller one. At home, the checks looked cleaner in my kitchen's honest light. The ink had that old sheen, like it wanted to be live again. The numbers stamped in violet that has gone brown read the same each night, even though each stamp is its own. 0319. The writing in the description line changed hands. I could see 3 different numbers for an R. One looked like it practiced. One had a leftward lean like a hand that learned in Europe and moved. One looked like the person wrote with a glove on. All 3 had written Bellman once, somewhere on each check. All 3 had scuffed that part afterwards with the pen back and forth the way a person does in embarrassment. I set the checks in a stack and pressed them under a cookbook no one had cooked from. And when I lifted the book, the checks held a little curve like sheets of metal. When I told my sister about the water on the phone, she snorted into the receiver and said her tap had rust for a week last winter, and she didn't die. Her voice carries from town to town like a woman who is always half out the door in boots. She asked if I'd thought of days. I told her nights paid $1 more an hour. She said $1 wouldn't matter when I started having trouble driving home at 8 a.m. with my eyes glued to my face. She told me to get groceries for 2 days at a time so I didn't have to pass the school bus line. She said she had a line on used tires if mine went bald. We haven't lived in the same state in 10 years, and we have the same hands. When I hang up with her, my ear feels like I've been holding a warm stone to it. On the 6th night, the man in the overcoat by the fireplace was there again. His eyes were open when I went by and shut when I came back. We do not put hands on guests unless they ask. The fire spit in its gasway when the heat kicked, a neat-toothed sound. The desk clerk had the look of someone who will cry and then be fine. A bus stalled out front, and everyone watched it through the glass for a minute, the way you watch a small animal on the far shoulder of a highway. The bus moved without any help of ours. The water sat in its bottles and reflected the wrong light for a second when a car turned. The house phone ticked. The bag waited. This time, when I put the bag in the room, the mirror showed a second bag there already, a twin by the foot of the bed, handle up, tag half turned. My room had 1 bag. The mirror's room had 2. The little distance between what I could touch and what I could see might have been the whole story. I set the bag with care and made sure the handle caught on the bed leg because the leaning carpet felt like it wanted small things to roll to wherever the building keeps small things. The envelope had the key stamped 13 like always. I put the envelope into my waistcoat and the key into my pocket and the coins into my hand. I like the weight of coins because they are stupid. I held them and felt the skin between my fingers take on the cold. I could smell something like mildew and something like the old glue of a library. The phone ticked. I put the coins in my mouth for a second the way you do when you need 2 hands and don't want to set them on a thing, and the taste was iron on tongue and paper on teeth. My tongue thought of the coolant again. I spat into the tissue I keep in my pocket for that. The tissue took the black of the coin like it had wanted to be proved right. Back in the hall, the freight seemed to wait. When a machine waits, you learn to tell if it has patience or if it has a timer. This had patience. I pulled the cart in and went down to 12 and then down to the basement and then up again like a person who had done the right amount of nothing. On the 7th night, the boil water advisory turned into a brown water reality for 2 floors. We ran lines until they ran clear, and then ran them more, because the person from the health department who talked on the radio to the manager had a way of saying, out of an abundance of caution, that made good sense sound like failing. We left more trays at more doors. Someone left a towel outside a door folded wrong, and the wrongness felt personal. The bell stand collected papers and crumbs, and a tiny marble I couldn't explain. The marble sat in the shadow line of the stand, like a planet that had landed where no planet will stay. I put it in my pocket, because a pocket is where uncommonly small, round things go. Later, I did not have the marble anymore. The pocket had a little clean ring where the marble had lived an hour. The bag was there. The freight did what it did. The corridor smelled like glue. The numbers went 1308, 1310, 1312. The room made a fine frost on the inside of your inhale if you allowed it. The envelope said Bellman. The key said 13, with long feet on the 1 and no top on the 3. The coin said a country is larger than a pocket. The claim check said 0319, and the 9 stuck its chin up. This time, in the mirror, the phone rang once and dropped. In my room, the phone ticked. The mirror's chair had no sheet. The mirror S chair had an old blue upholstery with a threadbare line where a head would rest. The mirror's chair had a man in it. He wasn't there like a person is there. He sat in the way a room learns a person. The dip, the shape, the ghost of a body inside a habit. No face, no eyes, just the geometry of the seat under the pressure of a thing that isn't a T in the room with your hands, but exists wherever your eyes are forced to admit a habit cast, like the trace a heavy object leaves on carpet after months when you move it, and the nap takes days to stand. I backed out and shut the door with 2 fingers. I put my hand on my chest, because there is a thing your heart does in a moment like that, when it wants to leave. I told it no. The word feels childish and strong. The freight gate scissored, the indicator blinked, and the blank plate shone. I took the key home. I took all the keys home. I laid them in a line on my table like a person laying out tools. There were 6. Each had the same stamp. Each had tiny differences in its scratches. One had a notch that did not help it open anything I had to open. I held the key in my hand until the brass made a smell like my childhood, when my grandfather fixed the brass trolley bell on the bench by the radiators in the winter. That bell had a pull that made a sound like a flock moving under tin. Our house had 30 ways to make a noise, none of them electronic. My grandfather said brass was honest because it didn't pretend to be expensive and he could make it shine with vinegar. He would have hated the fake brass in the Monarch. His hands were the size of the palms in the mirror. At some point, I slept and dreamed the freight car was full of water with currents very slight, but something like a tide. Then I dreamed a thing that has stayed. The older hallway had a window at the far end that looks out into brick where there is no outside, and the window had the old ripple glass that makes light from the street turn into water on a wall. I walked toward it and could see my own reflection inside each ripple, a different man slightly off where I am off, and they did not look back in time with me. I came in on the 8th night with the taste of brass in my mouth and a headache that sat above my left eye like a coin. The front desk had a head count low enough that the manager did her smile, the one that means she will be at the desk instead of in the office if anything tips. The overcoat man was gone, and the fireplace was cold because someone forgot to order more gas on a spreadsheet that thinks heaters fill themselves. The radios made a soft sea of numbers. The water advisory lifted, and the sign went down into the cabinet where signs go to rest. The building coughed and liked it. I thought, I can ignore the bag tonight. It was a stupid thought. It felt like the sawtooth you tongue because it lives there. It made the tongue want it more. At 0319, the phone clicked. The bag was there, warmer than the air. The tag had the hotel's logo with a small mistake under the wings, where the printers had cut a line too fine and the ink had broken. We get batches like that sometimes. The surface has a sheen you can check yourself in, a poor mirror. The freight felt colder. The blank plate shone, the gate scissored. The old wallpaper breathed glue. The numbers decided to be themselves. The door was unlatched. The room had a drawer open in the mirror and shut in my fingers. The envelope said Bellman. I took the envelope. I took the key and left the coins and took the claim check and put it with its cousins. I moved to leave and did not. I kissed the blank plate on the way back down with my 2 fingers, the way you touch a door frame you left in a house you grew up in. When you have a rule, you can break it carefully or you can break it like a glass. I had a rule about not touching the mirror with my face. I broke it. I leaned and looked hard. My face looked like my face half an hour before sunrise. My eyes were bigger than they needed to be. The lines around them belonged to work and the habit of saying, "Sir." Behind me, the room in the mirror had a weather I could not feel. Tiny flecks fell through the air in that room and showed themselves in the light. The flecks moved like dust moves, but they fell wrong. They fell as if the air in the mirror had a slight angle and wanted to set dust down in a corner. They fell to the left. I was falling asleep, standing up. I turned my head physically, and the flecks in the mirror kept falling to the left. I put my hand to the mirror and laid my palm down where the other palm S-dents had been. The cold of the glass came through, and something like sadness came through it with the cold. I do not use that word if I can help it. The mirror did not send anything back through my hand but temperature. In my pocket, the old key pressed itself into my leg. The cut of the key is like a map if you let it be. I took it out and looked. The bittings by their nature cannot match any lock we now use. I thought of holding the key to the blank plate as if the old plate might be a lock. Then I thought of putting the key into the door of 1312 because that is the thought keys want. I touched the key to the plate and felt nothing. That night I pulled the cart back to the elevator with a feeling like being late on a bill in a small town where the bank knows your name and will say it soft. The freight took me to 12 and then to the basement. The basement smells like clean water and old water and sometimes like gas when a line is bleeding air. The floor has the dust you cannot mop, the dust that waits until you make a wet path and then sits outside it like a boundary. The laundry hums in its steady way that will make you think you off balance if you stand too long, like a boat at dock. Someone had left a mop with its head in the bucket and its stick leaning, which is as good as throwing away the head, because that smell never leaves. I leaned the mop properly and left the bucket to drain and did not look at the way the drain swallowed the water reluctantly, like it was afraid of what was coming down with it. The week flattened into the kind of schedule your body keeps, whether you want it to or not. Go in, make coffee, check carts, push bags, interval, envelope, old key, mirror, chair dip, dust falling wrong, phone tick, blank plate, down. The weather outside came and went. An empty truck idled out front one night long after it had a reason to. The police cruised slowly by, and the officer AS face looked like a cartoon gone halfway through erasing. The manager gave a speech to afternoon shift about snow removal and overtime approval. And we will get through this, the way managers do when they have no number to offer that will make you feel fair. I watched her put her hands into the pockets of her blazer like the pockets could go deep enough to keep the building in them. On the 9th night, I found the notebook under the sheet. I did it like you do anything you are ashamed of but must. I lifted the sheet with one finger higher than the night deserves and put my arm under and felt around with my hand like a blind small animal. My hand closed on the notebook like the notebook had been waiting to come to a hand just like mine. I pulled it out and let the sheet fall. The book was leather, soft as a wallet. It had been something held and held. The strap was broke and had been tied once with a shoelace, and then untied and then tied again in a little knot a person uses when they want to be able to set their thumb there later and feel the satisfaction of pulling something through. The leather held the polish of hands better off than mine, but with the same bones. I opened it, though I hate breaking the logic of a room. The first page had an index a person had begun and not kept. The hand was legible, a neat, laboring hand, the letters formed with care, like a man who taught himself to write when there was no teacher. The pages after it were lined and filled with dates and what a person would call notes, but I would call orders to themselves. The dates were dumb in the way dates must be. The list had things like pull rugs for steam, 12, and order salt, dock door, and bell, check clapper. The word bell had a line under it that went too deep and had been rubbed out and was still there. The times were always early, and the time pattern on all of them was a thing I did not want to see. A dot at 19 past some hour, not always 3, but 19, like a thing the hand had learned. The hour 3 appeared so many times, my eyes wanted to protest because they remembered the other stories, My Life Isn't Tea. I put the book down and put it up again, and put it in the pocket where the claim checks were. Except the book had its own shape, and my pocket anchored itself around it, and I felt the weight of it pulling me to one side. In the mirror, the book sat on the desk where I had not put it. The mirror's book was a twin. The mirror's room held a different air. The mirror's phone might ring if the room wanted it to. On the 10th night, by the time the house phone ticked and the bag waited, I had made a plan. It feels weak to call what I had a plan, but when a man says plan, he is looking for forgiveness. The plan was this: I would take only the envelopes, I would leave the bags, I would close the door without going inside, I would keep the keys together, I would not open the notebook again, I would not stand with my hand against the mirror like a lonely man in a train station asking the glass for news. I would leave whatever dustfall and chair dip there was to be. I would tell no one. I went to the room. The door was not unlatched. It was open. That was different. The sheet over the chair was gone. The mirror showed me the room like a photograph in a frame sold at a store, where the photograph is just to show you what a frame looks like with a life inside it. The phone ticked. A smell like steam-wet linen and something copper lived in the room. The bed under the sheet had a dip where a person not big had sat cross-legged and then undone that thought and stood. There was a glass on the table with the rim scored by teeth on the motion of a nervous mouth. Something in the wall knocked softly. A pipe maybe, or a hand where a hand should not be. I stepped backward because I have learned that stepping backward like a man who knows he will not trip is an art you can practice and perfect. The envelope was on the cart. The envelope knew my name. It said Bellman in block letters, and then underneath, in the careful hand of the notebook writer, it said a word I have not seen in many floors of my life. It said, "Thank you." The key inside was warm from something other than pocket. The coins were still dumb. The claim check said 0319. The paper smelled like a drawer that has not been opened in a building that learned to fear rain a generation ago. I put the envelope into the pocket under my vest, where the fabric rubs the corner until it shines. I closed the door that was open and made sure I did not put my fingerprints anywhere that would matter to a person later, because that is a habit and a kindness and a fear all at once. The freight took me to 12, and then all the way down to the basement without my pushing the button. I stepped out anyway because the basement is where the building keeps its honesty. The boilers thumped their nameless song. The big laundry sorted itself. The condensate made a neat thread of drip into a pan the size of a bathtub and ran out the overflow anyway, because pipes are dreams. I stood by the door of the old cage elevator that we do not use anymore because it goes to places we do not want to remember. The cage is painted a grit gray. The lock is nothing like the locks we have. I held the old keys to it and tried the one stamped 13 because I am a man of small faiths. The key did not fit, and the not fitting had the satisfaction of a palm hitting a table. Here is a boundary. I went back up. I set the breakfast cart correctly in the slow light of a not yet morning. I wiped the coffee stains I had put there yesterday. I sat on the bell stand stool and felt the little rivets catch my thigh where the vinyl had split. I watched the doors. I watched the reflection of myself in the glass above the doors looking out, and sometimes my reflection had the notebook and sometimes it did not, depending on where the light caught. The 11th night, I put the notebook into a plastic sleeve because water does not care what you love. I opened it again because I'm not a liar. The hand that wrote in it had a steadiness I envied. I found a page with a list that could have been any day I have lived. Bellman 12-gallon left bag, Bellman 12:30 right bag, 110 Mr. H asked about heat, 140 hot water to room 1 and 4 shut, 4th floor, circulator. Then a line, then another, then a small private note. Tried the key, wrong door. Then a time, then 3:19. In another hand, a different one, a lighter one, heard it again. Another, thank him if I see him. None of them have names. The book isn't a diary. It is a mouth that doesn't want to open farther than the bite. The 12th night, the bag did not come. I stood there with my hands on the edge of the bell stand, like a man ready to jump, but needing the suggestion. The house phone did not tick. The freight did not blink. The blank plate looked dull, the way a worry stone will look when you forget to carry your worry. I put my hands in my pockets and took them out and put them in again. On the desk screen, the cameras made their slow carousel. The one in the service corridor outside the freight held a small fuzz on the edge, like a broken eyelash. I let out a breath I didn't know I had kept. At 03:19, the lobby lights flickered. The fountain's smooth sheet stuttered once and then ran again. The front desk clerk looked up at me and raised her eyebrows, and we both pretended we hadn't tea, no bag. I walked the service hall and came back with a coffee I didn't want from the machine outside the ballroom. The ballroom smelled like soap and a history of laughter people are always trying to sell. I went back to the bell stand and felt like a man who has been told a joke and can to laugh yet. On the 13th night the bag waited, but it was different. It was older, not in the way of scratches, but in the way of fabric broken down to the weave. The handle resisted your hand and then gave like a joint you do not trust. The tag had been threaded with string and not with plastic, and the string had the fur of soft rot. The printing on the tag was the same font, which made less sense than any other part, and the paper was thicker and held its corners better than anything we use now. I slid it toward me, and the little wheels rumbled with grit caught in them. I looked at the freight and the blank plate like a person looks at a road where they have hit a deer before. The blank plate shone clean and then dull and then clean again, as if a thumb were moving across it in time with my own heartbeat. The room was what it always was and wasn't. The phone ticked. The mirror did its light. The notebook lay on the desk where I had not left it. The chair had no sheet. I could smell steam. I could smell the copper tang of water in pipes that have learned a new route around an old mistake. I could see the dust falling in the mirror to one side only, and I could feel my own body have a look or a tilt when the elevator moved in my head. The envelope had no coins. The envelope had the key and the claim check and a folded card that said in the careful hand, I did not go alone. The card might have belonged to the man who wrote thank you, and it might have belonged to another, and I will not say whether I believed either. When I took the cart back out, the envelope sat on the cart again, though I had put it in my pocket. I had two then. I held both, like a man who has been given change that is wrong and wants to set it straight, and can tee, because the window has gone low, and the man behind it feels like a friend. I put both in the pocket. Where the pocket shines, there is a spot like a coin itself, a false coin you wear. The 14th night, a boy at the front desk said he had seen a floor plan once in a PDF that had been scanned from paper from the city. He said he had tried to find it again and couldn't. He stood with his fingers on his keyboard like a pianist. He said it had weird notches. The way he said weird made me like him a little less, because he is young and everything is weird, and that is the name he has for what the world refuses to be. I went down to the basement and put my hand on the cage elevator's door. The mesh had the cold of winter. I leaned my head to the bars and peered into the lift, which is like looking into a rib cage. It had no light. The dust had a pattern where something big had lain and then not. The lock in the cage had the same mean smile it has had for 100 years. My keys in my pocket, all 6, said nothing. When I came back up, the freight smelled faintly of sugar because someone had broken a jar of jam 2 days ago, and even a mop, one to pull that smell out of the lip of metal where the plate meets the pillar. I breathed the sugar and let it go. On the 15th night, I took nothing with me to the room. Not the cart, not the bag. I left the bag where it was and walked into the freight with my hands empty like a kid trying to be chosen for nothing. The gate scissored, the older wallpaper breathed, the numbers said 1308, 1310, 1312. The door was unlatched. I stepped inside. The phone did not tick. The mirror held me in the way that a still lake holds a sky. The chair wore no sheet. The book lay on the desk. The bed said not today. I stood there until my eyes gave up the trick of seeing light and dark and made their own. My heart got tired of being interesting. The air learned me. I put my hand to the mirror and left it there. My hand did not look like a thing that belonged to me. The palm in the mirror did not line up with mine. The palm in the mirror belonged to the big hand with the stitched-up base. It did not move away or toward. It held. I held. When I left, the hall did not know me. The freight did not play polite sounds. I rode to 12 and then to the lobby, and the lobby had a different light in it, though it was the same hour where the street gives you its left-behind cheap glow, and the building takes it and turns it into a floor. The kid at the desk had a look on his face like he had decided to leave, and then remembered he had no coast to drive to. The coffee pumps had a line of drips along the rims, like tear tracks, and those always happen when someone a little careless thinks they are being careful, and they are. But the pump likes to spit. At 0319, the building shivered. The fountain's smooth sheets stuttered and recovered. The house phone ticked and did not ring. The security monitor blinked, and the feed from the freight paused exactly 1 frame and then caught up. I did not go to the bag. There was no bag, or there was one that I could not see from where I stood, or both of these things were true, which is the sort of math you do when you live inside a machine long enough. I wish I could say the story lives in a clean line after that. People like to hear the moment things break, so they can watch the person crawling inside the idea of themselves. I did not break. Work kept, as work does. I took bags to rooms with numbers above doors that had hinges like any hinge sold in the last 20 years. I put out pastries and wiped and reset and pushed and said hello and will you need anything else with my voice, and let my hands say I am a man who understands where your shoes have been. I watched the manager put new batteries in the radios and in her own body, and liked her better for how she slumped when she thought no one would take note. I stood by the bell stand and did the half lean that people think is casual, and that only comes when your feet hurt and you have learned not to show it to yourself. And I went to the room that does not exist at 0319 when the house phone ticked. I took the envelope. I put the key in my pocket. I looked myself dead in the mirror and tried to memorize my one face and the one chair. The dust in the mirror fell to the left. The dust in the room held. When the snow stopped and the roads cleared and the boil water signs went away and the fountain righted itself for good, those things did what changes do in a hotel. No one said congratulations, but everyone moved with a looseness your back remembers. The overcoat man returned with a blue scarf and a new suitcase, and he did not look at me, which is the proper thank you. The manager allowed herself a coffee she had not earned that morning, and smiled in a way that went all the way to her bottom rib. Day shift stopped hearing me come in. The kid at the desk went to Denver, or he just didn't come back, and we found out because the schedule told us. The bag did not come for 3 nights, and then it came again, as if it had been out of town that week and was back for the same conference as last year. I realize the way I have told this is a failure of the sort that comes from putting days in a row for people who like to hear days in rows. I could give you incidents, a window that shows brick where there is not brick, the smell of steam in winter. A woman in a robe who asked me for 30 towels at 4 a.m. And when I brought them, smiled and said, "You always come, thank you." And I had never seen her once and did not see her again. The way the notebook page at the back had a name in pencil, and the pencil had been erased, and the name left the indentation, the way a secret leaves a measure on the person who carries it, the way a key stamped 13, lined with teeth cut for a different era, can bruise your thigh through a pocket that has learned your shape. I can tell you that I have 6 keys, and then I have 7, and then on a night when the water carried silt from a pipe we had thought was retired, I had 8. The 8th key had a different stamp. The 8 is the old kind with a belly. The 1 is a straight line, no little hat. The 3 gives up halfway through the top of itself and ends before it should, like a thought that will not be finished. I can say there is a weight things collect when they mean to take you. It is not always a sharp pull. It is the habit of a shift that turns a corner and keeps going. And that is your life. It is trays you push and trays you pull. It is the moment your eye finds the clean spot on the blank plate and you name it. And you can never pretend you do not see what you have named because the naming has painted it into your mind. On the last night I will tell you about, because stories must stop where the fact of telling wants them to, the hotel had a wedding party that came in late. They wore their formal clothes like costumes at first, and then like punishment. The women had shoes in their hands by the time I saw them. The men had their jackets open and their collars looser. A man who was not drunk and believed everyone thought he was said he would tip me when he had cash. I told him there was no hurry and meant it. The DJ had played a song I know from a year when I was meaner. The elevators coughed and worked. The fountain hummed itself to sleep. The manager left early, and it felt like a gift we had given her somehow. At 3:19, the house phone ticked. I stood with my hand on it and listened to nothing. The bag was there, not old, not new, the fabric fatigued. The tag with our stupid logo smiled. The handle had low cold. The blank plate on the freight shone and did not shine. I hooked the bag with my foot and walked to the service hall. The gate scissored. The wallpaper breathed. The numbers rose and settled. The door waited. I pushed it with 2 fingers. Inside, the chair had no sheet and no man. The mirror had its light. The dust fell left in it. The notebook lay where people put the little cards that say the names of the coffee pods. The bed had a dip. The phone did not tick. I set the bag by the bed. The wheels did the last inch. I sat in the chair. The upholstery has that feel old chairs have where the cotton has gone to felt and the felt has learned the bodies that needed it. The arms polished the polish back onto my forearms. I listened for pipes, for the hum of the air, for the thing a machine says before it dies and after. There was nothing. There was only the purely stupid sound of my breathing and the tiny scuff that my right foot makes when I hold it like that. I thought of my sister in another state telling me to go to Days and go to the market on Wednesdays before everything sells, and to get tires on the car before I try to cross a mountain that doesn't want to see me. I thought of my grandfather polishing a bell that had no right to shine and insisting it did. I thought of the envelope with Bellman on it and the 2 words, "thank you," that felt like someone had pulled them out of a pocket slowly, as if they were coins with heat still in them. I stood. I went to the mirror. I put my hand up and then I did not. I looked at the chair behind me and the chair in the mirror, and the way the chair in the mirror sat a half inch to the left, where the world had a bad ankle. I watched the dust in the mirror fall to a corner of the glass. I watched my own mouth do something I don't like to see. The door moved. It took me a moment to understand that of course the door would move. I had left it unlatched. The door opened a hand's width and then a little more. The hall outside was the older hall with the numbers. The cart sat with an envelope on it I had not put there. The envelope said Bellman. The inside held 3 coins. 2 the same old country, 1 the whole kind, and the claim check with the time and the stamp and the note in the careful hand that said, "We are here." Under it, in the lighter hand, "Bring it." Under that, in a hand that scratched so hard the paper tore a bit, "Please." I took the coins and the key and the claim check and put them into my pocket. I lifted the bag handle and it was cold. The wheels went the last inch against my foot and the carpet leaned a little more, which is a thing a floor does if a building wants to get hold of your body. On my way out, I put my hand against the mirror. The glass was cool and then warm. The warmth held. The other palm did not meet mine. It did nothing at all. The dust in the mirror fell to the left, and then, as if it had found a new way to go, it fell up. In the freight, the gate scissored shut. The indicator did not move. The blank plate felt like it had been touched by 100 colder thumbs, and one that was mine. The car hummed. It went nowhere at all, and then it went to 12, like a good thing. In the lobby, the lights did their sigh they do at this hour. The fountain went quiet, and then made a quiet like a person clearing their throat, and then remembered to be water. The desk clerk was a man with a beard I had not seen before. He had a list of names in front of him, and his finger was moving slowly down it, like he was not so much reading as measuring. He said, "You need help," without looking, and I said no, and that word fit my mouth best of all the words I have carried. I put the bag by the bell stand. I put the envelope under the till. I put my hand on the desk phone and listened to the machine remember how to breathe. I waited. When the morning came, and the day men arrived with their coffee and their grins and their habit of going to the back first, because all the good news hides in the back, the hotel was the same as it has ever been. The manager came in a little late with a mouth that said she didn't care, and eyes that said she had not been given any choice. The fountain was water. The guests in their winter shoes stamped snow and were remarkably patient when their keys demagnetized because they had shoved them in the same pocket as their phones. The boy with the beard was gone. The schedule had a different name where his had been. The book in my pocket felt heavier this shift, as if it had found itself again on a different shelf. I do not know what you want me to say here. That is not my business. I have not tried the keys indoors that were not meant for me. I have not put my hand into the mirror looking for another hand. I have walked the hall with numbers that learn new habits. I have put envelopes into a pocket until the pocket has polished where they pass. I have taken the thank you not meant for me and accepted it as my share. If you come into the Monarch and you ask about our flaws, I will tell you what the buttons tell me to. If you leave a bag by the bell stand with a tag that came from our tray and it does not belong to anyone I can see, I will put my hand on it and find it's cold and do what I am paid to. If the house phone ticks at 0319, you will not hear it from the lobby unless you are listening for nothing, which you aren't. If the elevator indicator pauses between 12 and 14, that is a machine being an honest machine. If you wake in the night and your room feels a little wrong, or a little older than it is, or the mirror shows you something you would prefer it not, use the shears. No one ever believes me, but the shears matter. If you need towels at 4 in the morning, put a note on the tray. Someone will bring them. If your tag says 1312, and you do not understand why it says 13 because we do not have one, you will not see me argue with the tag. The other day I found a marble in the pocket of my winter coat. It had that little runny look glass has when it has been put away warm. I set it on my table, and it made a small, clean circle there where heat and roundness find the dust and decide to make it go away. The marble rolled a half-inch on its own and stopped as if the house had leaned a fraction and wanted to keep that secret for itself. The notebook has a few pages at the back. I haven't filled them. I think about writing my name on one of those pages. I think about writing Bellman like the rest did. I think about leaving the book in the drawer in 1312 where I found it, which is another name for giving up something to that air. I think about the call that happens at 0319 and the way it sounds like a relay. And the way you can feel in your teeth how a relay will fail before it fails, and you keep going because the part on the truck isn't a T for that kind anymore, and the guy in maintenance has been saying he'll get one for a year, and the guy in maintenance is a good guy who has his own life to carry. Tonight, there will be a bag by the bell stand, or there won't be, and both are the same truth. There will be an envelope with coins that mean nothing and keys that remember a lock and a check, with a stamp that leans. I will move through the lobby. The carpet pattern will make its mistake. The clocks will argue by a minute and then forgive each other. The fountain will make its flat water sheet and then find a seam, only one. The seam you can stand and stare at until it looks like the world trying to tell you how to read it. I will put my thumb on the blank plate and think of nothing. I will take the freight. I will watch the numbers climb the way a person watches a tide. I will step out into the older wallpaper and I will make a joke to myself about how glue has a smell like sweet things if they were made to bind rather than give. I will push the bag to the bed and the wheels will find their last inch. I will look in the mirror and I will not count the things that are the same. I will pick up an envelope that says Bellman. I will put it in the pocket I have made into a pocket for things like these. I will ride down and the freight will not sing me any new song and I will not ask it for one. The lobby will keep its breath. The house phone will tick once and let go. The fountain will be water again. The door will open for no one and no one will walk through. On the security camera later, I will watch myself stand at the freight doors and wait, and the doors will not open for me, and then I will be moving again, pushing my cart, my hands on the bar in that way that makes a person think of a man rowing, and the handle will gleam a little as if it has seen rain. If you watch closely, and you will not, there is a moment where the damp around my hands might be in the camera or it might be on me. I am not frightened in the way people like to imagine they would be. I am worked. I am carried. I will stick a note under the register that says, "Please refill the pledge." I will set the breakfast cart right. I will tuck the notebook into the pocket where a heart would go if fabric had organs. I will take a breath at 03:18 and a different one at 03:20, and they will be the same. If you come in with your bag and it has a tag that says Monarch Hotel, floor 13, room 1312, I will not correct you. I will say good evening or good morning, depending. If you ask me where the elevator is, I will point. If you ask me whether there's a 13th floor, I will show you the buttons and shrug without making my shoulders say too much. If you leave your bag by the stand and go on, I will put my hand on the handle and I will feel the cold and the bag will feel the hand, because that is how handles work. I will walk to where the freight waits. The blank plate will shine where 100 thumbs have pressed. The cab will hum in a way that tells my teeth who I am. The gate will scissor open. I will go. I will do what I am paid to do. When the building leans, we lean with it. When the dust in the mirror decides its route, we do not argue. When the coins hit the palm and remind the tongue what metal is, we remember vinegar and brass and men with big hands and the way a bell says a thing that is not a name and how we answer anyway. When the envelope says Bellman, I am who it means. When the claim check says a time a little off from what a person would call polite, I am awake. When the chair's sheet dips the way a body presses a life into a cushion, I know better than to sit there long. When someone writes thank you with the careful hand of a man who taught himself to write when there was no teacher, I put my hand to the page and I put the page away and I go on to the next room and the next, because that is the job. Because of course, we have a 13. The hotel would not work otherwise. We live on floors no one names and carry what gets left between them. You can press the blank and it will shine. You can press and press and press, and the plate will outlast your thumb, and the glass will hold the smudge of a palm that was bigger and a little higher. And when you lift your hand, there will be two prints, and you will not swear one is yours. I know mine by the odd line on the base of the thumb, which came from a box cutter in the winter. I worked loading for a hardware store, and I can see it sometimes very faint under the bigger line that someone a long time ago left. If you have worked your hands, you will recognize the company you keep. The clocks behind the desk have disagreed every night since the first night I wrote of. That is how I know the world still has some mercy left. If they ever agree and stay agreed, I will go home and lie down and not get up again, not for any reason a person will understand. Until then, there are bags, there are floors, there is water to put out and cold to push back. There is someone waiting on a bed that has not warmed yet, on a floor that does not show on the card behind the door. There is a ring at 03:19 that starts and stops like a breath held and then let go. There are envelopes. There is a key stamped 13. There is a lock somewhere I do not have to find. There is the small, honest work of carrying something from here to there. In the mirror, where a different corner pulls the dust, sometimes I see the chair behind me, and sometimes I do not. When I do not greet the shadow set in it. I am a Bellman. I have learned to nod without saying hello. I have learned to take what I am given and take it where it belongs. I have learned to let the blank be the blank and to press it anyway, for the comfort in the way a thing refuses to give. If there is a name you want to put on that, keep it. I have a cart to wipe. I have a key to carry. I have a plate that shines where hands teach plastic to remember. I have a floor that is there when I step, and a floor that is there when I look, and both accept me. That is enough. That is the work. If this story lands with you, please like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who enjoys quiet literary horror. Comments are open. Tell me your favorite image or line.